We got the funk.
The song is called Give Up the Funk. It's by Parliament. Now known as Parliament Funkadelic.
I got echo. There we go. All right. All right. Let's see. Creator dashboard.
We record the pre-show.
Yeah. It's not part of the real show per se. We usually just leave it in for anyone who comes in afterwards. All right. So we are live everywhere we want to be live. That's good.
Cool. I can't see here, but I'm assuming there are tens of thousands of people listening.
It's slowly ramping up to that. Yeah. All right.
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. What do you think? Should I put on my headphones?
I don't hear any feedback, so it's not a big deal.
So the audio's okay? I've got a boom mic on my head. What do you think?
If it's fine leaving them out. I leave my out because there's usually no feedback.
Okay.
All right. All right. Try to get my chat up and running. All right, we got a bunch of people on Twitch now. So actually, David, will you stop your screen share for a couple minutes?
I thought I did. Hang on. Where's my mouse? Turn it. My mouse, my keyboard and mouse just locked up.
That's bad.
Yeah. Well,
your video's still going though, so that's good.
Touch screen. Do that. And here. I got it back. It was just a hiccup. If I minimize everything. Minimize. Right there. Click.
There you go.
How about Alt Tab? Alt Tab. It's probably because it's up here.
Yeah. It's the stop share button on that. That little bar. What's awkward is when you're doing working with multiple monitors, that little bar can be on any screen, and you don't know which one. So it's been like 10 seconds searching all the screens for that little itty bitty bar.
That's the price you pay for having a command center in your living room.
All right. So the way it usually goes is when we start, I'll ask you a few extremely tough questions.
Whoa, I'm ready.
Who you are, who do you work for, and what you say you do there.
Who was that middle one?
What's that?
What was that middle question?
Who you are, where you work, and what do you say you do there? If you're comfortable talking about that, which I think you are. Your employer is pretty good to you. When they're not sending you on cross world trip. Globetrotter. I'll ask you about your origin story. So how you got into tech.
My secret origin story?
Your secret origin story. Yep. And then I'll ask you if you have a hobby outside of tech. Sleep, probably. Sleeping in.
I have a lot of hobbies, but I can't really talk about them on air.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was almost that type of show, right?
No, illegal.
Swift kick after dark. All right. David, you got a good audience out there.
Good. Well, how many?
I got at least 15 people I can see.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You see me right now?
Yep, they're out there watching right now. So hi, folks on Twitch. Hi, folks on YouTube. Hi, folks on Periscope, Mixer, all that good stuff. We're everywhere, David.
Wow.
So, the global community. So if you're out there, say hi in the chat. We would love to see where you're chatting from. Let's see. I got hello from Jonathan. Jonathan is a local friend of mine. He's always in every show. Like, he is our #1 fan.
The Jonathan is a stalker, is what I'm hearing.
He's close to it, but you know what? We love
Griffin
John.
head. He's like the deadheads that travel around following Kevin in town.
That's fine. I don't mind. He's a stalker that keeps his distance. I mean, he's
so far. So he's like me, you're telling me.
Yeah. All right.
That's cool. So Jonathan and I have something in common that we can build on.
Yeah.
Hey, Jonathan. What's up?
So I got the share out on the social media. David, if you haven't, go retweet me. So all your friends, family, coworkers, significant others, random people know that we're live.
The SwiftKick show. They tweeted. I guess you probably tagged me in it, right?
What's that?
Was it you? Oh, it was you. Okay.
Yeah, it was me. Going live with David Giard, the David Giard.
Yeah, with a capital T. And that rhymes with me.
David effing Giard.
The F is for fabulous.
Let's see.
The F is for funk.
The funk. So what did you do over in Tokyo, right? Is that where you were?
Tokyo late last night, early this morning. I was there for something called an open hack. An open hack is kind of a workshop. It's Microsoft's been putting on a lot of these the last couple of years. And it's differs from most workshops in that there's not set steps to go through. You know, a lot of workshops you go to say, here, open up Visual Studio, select file, select new, and type this in. This is more about, here's a problem to solve. Here's some technologies that will help you solve that problem, and then throwing you in the water and figuring it out, telling you to figure it out. But there's a coach there with you to kind of guide you as you're figuring it out. And I was a coach there at one focused on data warehouse technologies.
Oh, cool.
Mostly in the cloud. And it was in Tokyo, which is really interesting. First, I've never been to Japan before. In fact, I've never been to Asia until this trip. And second, because it was people in Tokyo, by and large, don't speak English. You know,
okay.
Spoiled. I've been to a bunch of European big cities, and people there tend to speak English. Not so in Japan. They speak a little bit, but we had to make do. You know, they had to figure it out. It's a couple of interpreters there, but mostly I learned like 3 words in Japanese, and they learned like, I don't know, 50 words in English.
You need to learn like the most important words, like bathroom, I guess airport, and hotel, something like that.
Usually,
so not even like hello or goodbye, just
hello and
bathroom.
That'll get you through most places. Hello and thank you. Sometimes excuse me, but
all right. So how you say excuse me? And
I forgot already. There's
see.
It's actually a really important word. There's a word that means excuse me and thank you. It's really like an all-purpose word. And
okay. Did you use Microsoft Translate any on your trip?
I didn't. Some people installed a translator app, but I did not.
I have Microsoft Translate and also the Google Translate, and I kind of go back and forth. And last time I was out of country, we had gone to Panama, and the resort we were at, most of the lobby staff all knew English, so we could get checked in, get everything we needed. But most of the service staff were Spanish only. So I would use Google Translate and use flashcards to ask them different questions.
Oh, very cool.
And it was really, really great because we were at a dinner table and someone was looking for tartar sauce and could not convince the waiter that they wanted tartar sauce. And I'm like, hold on, and pulled out Google Translate and typed in tartar sauce, translated it, turned the phone and showed it to the waiter, and the waiter's like, runs into the back and comes out with a little thing of tartar sauce. So it's extremely helpful.
Well, next time I go, I'm going to Denmark in next month, and maybe I will install some translator app on here, on my phone here. Or maybe, so the word I was thinking was sumimasen. Sumimasen is an all-purpose word. You can use it for thank you. You can use it for excuse me or I'm sorry. Like if you want to approach somebody in a train station, you want to ask them a question, you might start with sumimasen. Pardon me, sir. Can I?
Gotcha.
But it's also even you would say thank you, like it's still kind of apologetic thank you. You know, I'm sorry. You know, somebody does something nice for you. Thank you for inconveniencing yourself. Sorry, I had to do
nice.
that sort of thing. It's kind of a subdued thank you.
I like thank yous like that. That's
arigato is more as the formal thank you.
Yeah.
Or domo arigato, as you know from the song.
Mr. Roboto. Yeah.
Sometimes just say domo.
Domo. Okay. That's all you need to know, right?
Yeah, well, konnichiwa, you want to say that. So I said hello and thank you a lot.
All right, David, let's get this show started. What do you say?
Oh yeah, we came here to talk about something else.
All right, I'm going to start some recording. All right, we are recording. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the SwiftKick Show. My name is Kevin Griffin. I'm the owner of SwiftKick. We're a software training and consulting company based out of Southeast Virginia. And today I am joined by my very good friend, David Giard. How are you today, David?
I'm excellent. How are you doing, Kevin?
I am hanging in there. So David, when I say I've known you for a very long time, I have known you for what, 10 years now?
I remember the night we met. It was in Alan's backyard at a bonfire.
Oh my gosh. That's right. I remember that night. That was, wow. Those were the good old days of communities.
That night I think we became an MVP on the same day, and we joined INETA on the same day, and we became INETA officers the same day. We basically been in lockstep for a long time.
That's right. And then you went off and you joined this crazy company and couldn't be an MVP anymore.
Yeah.
But you know, how about we start there with our questions? So David, tell us a little bit more about yourself and who you work for and what do you say you do there?
Okay, I'm David Giard. I work for a big software company called Microsoft.
Wow. I thought they were just startup, right?
They wait though. Like everybody was a startup at one time. So Microsoft, of course, makes lots of software, and I am what's my title? I'm a senior software engineer, and I'm with an organization called Commercial Software Engineering. Our job is that we sit down with customers and we write code with them to help them get over hard technical problems, usually to help them move to the cloud. So we do a lot of knowledge transfer in terms of technology, in terms of software engineering processes. It's always sitting down side by side with a customer and working with them, as opposed to a lot of consulting companies that they'll build something for a customer and then hand it off. That's kind of our distinction.
Gotcha. So David, you and I have known each other for an extremely long time, like we said. Now, let's tell us your origin story. How'd you even get started in tech?
Oh, my secret origin story.
Yeah. You were bitten by a computer, right?
Wow. So this is funny. Most people, I don't know, a lot of people, they say, yeah, I started in tech because when I was 2 years old, I took apart my dad's TV set, put it back together. I wasn't like that at all. I grew up without tech. I was really not interested in computers until I was about 30 years old. I studied biochemistry as my undergraduate degree, and then I got a degree in finance, and I was an accountant for a while, and then I was an unemployed accountant for a while, and I ended up going back to school and studying computer engineering for a couple of semesters before I got a job in computers. Somebody called me up and said, "Hey, I hear you're looking for a job, and you know something about computers, and I have this company in Cincinnati, Ohio. Let's talk." And he ended up offering me a job, and I moved to Cincinnati and lived there for 10 years and learned about FoxPro and databases and Windows, and later on joined a consulting company and kind of just learned everything as I went, other than those couple of semesters. It was all on the job training.
Hey, yeah, and nothing wrong with that at all. Some of the best folks I know in tech are exactly like that.
Yeah.
So now you're with Microsoft.
Yep. I mean,
How long have you been with Microsoft?
It's 6 years last month.
6 years. Wow, it seems like yesterday almost.
It seems like I still feel like the new guy.
So David, outside of tech, do you have any interesting hobbies?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the tech gives me an opportunity to travel a lot and see the world, and I find that really fun. So I just came back from Tokyo. It was really nice. I'm going to Denmark next month. I'm a big photographer, so you may have seen photos that I've taken online. Usually at conferences, I can be found getting pictures of people. I do that. I go to a lot of sporting events. I go to a lot of live concerts. I live in downtown Chicago, which is this has an excellent live music scene. So
Yeah.
a couple times a month, I can go see a really good concert. So I keep busy.
Well, that's awesome. Well, just a reminder to the folks joining us live right now, we have an amazing crowd of folks. The chat is wide open. We would love to chat with you, get some of your questions, some of your feedback as we go. I'm going to let David go off and start talking. But if you ask a question, I will wait for a reasonable time for David to take a breath, ask the question on your behalf. Worst case scenario, we'll just ask all the questions at the very end. And with that, David, go ahead and share your screen and take over.
All right. I had to figure out how to do the screen sharing thing. There's a share button there. There's that thing there. Can you see it?
I see Notepad.
No,
Plus.
plus. That was where I was reminding myself. Sumi Musson is. So Sumi Musson for leaving that up. Let's see. Let's talk about Azure Functions.
All righty.
And let's see. We should start with this.
Yeah. And you didn't play enough of it for me to get demonetized or anything. So
I'll leave that up to you. I don't really know all the rules on that, but that was Parliament, George Clinton and Parliament. I better turn this one down. Singing "Give Up the Funk" with "Tear the Roof Off the Sucker" in parentheses. Most great funk songs, as you know, have a subtitle in parentheses. So I'm feeling the funk. I hope you're feeling the funk. Let's talk about Azure Functions, which is one of the serverless technologies from Microsoft Azure. Well, first let's talk about me. This is me. I've got a blog. I've got a TV show at technologyandfriends.com. Kevin has been on it many times. I have another TV show called Gcast. The URL is there. That's just little short videos on how to do things. There's my email address. There's my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle. Let's talk. I mentioned serverless. Serverless is, I think, a really bad word because it kind of implies that there are no servers. That's absolutely false. There are servers. It just means that you, the developer, don't have to worry about these servers. You can, let me minimize that. You can focus on the code that you're writing and deploying and not have to worry about things like managing the servers and the fault tolerance, scalability, all that stuff is handled automatically for you by a platform like Azure. Azure Functions is one of the tools inside of Azure that's one of the serverless tools. So it allows you to write code and deploy it. It's great for small pieces of code. If you want to build microservices that interact with each other, creating a bunch of functions and having them talk to each other is a really good way to do that. It tends to simplify a system because it's a lot easier to manage a lot of small pieces with clearly defined interaction points than it is, one gigantic system where anything can interact with anything else. That's kind of the advantage of microservices, or one of the advantages anyway. I already have a slide on this. Advantages: you get to focus on your code. Automatic scaling in Azure Functions is taken care of for you automatically. You don't have to scale out yourself. So if you have a service that's going to sometimes take huge amounts of processing and sometimes take little or no processing, you might want to have it deploy that to multiple servers at the same time to handle the high capacity, and then deploy it to fewer servers or when it's got low demand, because you don't want to pay for those. Azure is essentially a platform where you rent compute space rather than buy it. So the more compute power you use, the more you pay. Well, you want to use that and pay for it when there's high demand. Presumably that demand is doing something that's going to make you money, but when it's not being used, you don't want to be paying for these things sitting idle. And that's a little bit different from your traditional web application that maybe you host online. If you're hosting, or rather host yourself, if you have your own data center and you deploy a server or you deploy a cluster of servers, and those are servicing some kind of like a web service, for example, well, you kind of have to deploy enough to handle your peak demand. And it's really hard. You can't like sell those on eBay and then buy them back later on. You have to deploy it all. Well, with Azure, you can rent those out, and just on Friday afternoon when your application is really busy, maybe you'll rent 10 of them, and on Tuesdays when nobody's using it, might rent one just in case somebody calls in. And this, one thing that Azure Functions has is something called a consumption model. And a consumption model, you don't pay anything if it's not being used. You only pay when the function is running. So if this function is just deployed, but nobody's actually calling it, the cost is zero, which is really nice for those things that are only called once in a while. All right, so the tools, when you build an Azure function, it's just code. You can write it directly in the browser if you want to, and I'll show you how to do that. That's a nice quick and dirty way of doing it, but it doesn't lend itself to an enterprise application. But you can use editors like Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code. In fact, you can use any text editor. What Visual Studio and VS Code do is they add some tooling to assist you, maybe some highlighting of syntax, maybe some deployment tools, things like that, some automatic references, things that'll help you out as you're writing this code. And when you deploy it, well, if you create it in the browser, it's already deployed. There's nothing else to do. And that's okay, but it's not great for multiple teams and managing versions. If you create it in Visual Studio, you can simply right-click on a project and publish it, and it'll walk you through a wizard saying which Azure subscription and what resource group, what region, things like that. And that, again, that's okay, that works, but it doesn't work great for if there are multiple people on the same team. If you really want to manage this thing as a project, you can set up a continuous integration, continuous deployment process. And that's, and it's just code. These are text files that you can check into your source control and manage it through whatever tools you're using, whether that's Azure DevOps or GitHub or whatever you're using it for your CI/CD tools. This is the structure of Azure Functions, and I created this slide really for myself because originally I didn't get my head around it. So essentially, there is a function app, and within each function app, there can be multiple functions, and this maps really well to a Visual Studio project because the project itself gets deployed as the function app, and each class within that is deployed as a separate function. Each one of these functions will do one thing. It'll have some capability that when executed, when you call it, when it fires off, it'll run one bit of code. And they can interact with each other, but we try to keep them using the single responsibility principle, keep them each doing one thing. When I always say when it fires off, when a function actually runs, just deploying it doesn't run it. It has to be triggered by something. And that trigger can be, I got a little animation here. Trigger to the function, yeah. It can be an HTTP call or an HTTPS call. So that would make it a web service. It could be a message dropped onto a queue or a service bus. It could be a record entered into or modified in a database. It could be something on Event Hub, or it could be a timer. Maybe every night at 11:52 p.m. you want some process to kick off. Or maybe every 10 seconds you want this process to kick off and go check something or do something. This is the code for a function. There is a template for it in Visual Studio, but you see the function here has a method called run, and that's the action when a function is triggered. This is the method that will be called. I decorated with this function name attribute, and this is the name of the function that will display inside of Azure. And this part here depends upon what you specified as a trigger. This one happens to be an HTTP trigger, and so you have options like at what level are we setting authorization? Does it support what HTTP verbs does it support? And this one happens to support get and post. By default, it'll use the default routing for web API. So you'll get /API/function name. But you can change that. If you want to change the routing, you can do that in here. And there's the parameter. So in this case, because it's an HTTP request or HTTP trigger, we have this HTTP request object that we can use inside of our code and pull information out of that request, like information in the headers or in the query string or in the body of that request. And finally, we have a log, and but it can be anything that implements iLogger, but we can override that and pass in some logger, like right to a text file or a database or whatever, or even to the console, whatever your preferred method of logging is. That's available to us. So that's a function method in a nutshell. Functions also support this concept of bindings, and bindings are just a way of performing actions without writing any code. So if you wanted, for example, to write information to a database like SQL Server or Cosmos DB, you can simply decorate your function with an attribute, and it automatically will insert rows into these databases. Or if you want to drop a message on a queue, every time the function runs, you can do so in here. And here's the syntax for doing that. I add an extra method here, or an extra argument to my run method. In this case, it's for Cosmos DB, and I provide all of the information where to write a row. And then any information that comes in on the HTTP request will automatically be written to this Cosmos DB database. And you'll notice in the run method here, there is no code to write to that Cosmos DB database. It just automatically happens by adding this extra argument here. This to-do item that's passed in will automatically be inserted into Cosmos DB database, in this database, and in this collection name. Azure Function can be written in a number of languages: C#, F#, JavaScript, PowerShell, Java. The choice is up to you. You can create those and just deploy them out to Azure Functions. By default, Azure Functions are stateless, which means that every call to a function remembers nothing at all about the previous calls to that same function. If you need to add state to your Azure Functions, then you can create something called a durable function. And durable functions are designed to save state, and they're great for longer running workflows. So if something's going to take more than a short period of time, maybe it'll take a couple of days because there's a step in there for management approval or something like that, some human interaction. These are great for that. And durable functions essentially call your stateless functions, but they are responsible for managing that state from call to call. And you can create them as to call functions either in serial or in parallel. So here's an example of a durable function in my PowerPoint foo. Trigger a starter function, which calls a durable function, which calls in sequence 3 activity functions. Activity functions are just simple stateless functions. So in this case, I imagine that activity function 2 needed to know something that happened in activity function 1. This is a good way to orchestrate that. You could save the output of function 1 and use that and pass that in as an argument to function 2, and so on. This one's done in serial, so this is the code for that. So here we've given it a function name, durable function 1, but we've added a durable orchestration context and decorated that argument with the orchestration trigger. And that tells Azure that this is a durable function. And now we have this durable orchestration context, which I've named CTX. We can use that then to call activity functions. So ctx.call activity async will asynchronously call an activity function. And we told it in sequence, call function 1, then function 2, and then function 3. We're passing in arguments here. And you'll notice that the output of function 1, MSG, is passed as the input argument to function 2, and the output of that is passed to function 3. So we're saving some state and passing it in. And these ones happen to be running in serial. Function 2 doesn't happen until function 1 is done, and so on. We do that await keyword guarantees that. And here's an example of function 1. So it's a really simple one. All it does is, what I've got here is it has an activity trigger. An activity trigger is the stateful information I'm going to pass in. And it tells it this is in fact an activity function. All right. Here's another example of a durable function. In this case, it's a durable function that calls activity functions in parallel. So in my durable function here, I want to call functions 1, 2, and 3, essentially kick them all off at the same time, and they may run in any order at all. And I want to make sure that function 4 doesn't run until all 3 are completed. So that's another option that we can do. And here's the code for that. Once again, we have an orchestration trigger saying that this is in fact a durable function. And here we're using the parallel task library to call each one of these function 1, function 2, and function 3. And we're calling them all at the same time. So because this is called asynchronously, then task 1, task 2, and task 3 will fire off really quickly. They won't wait for a return from each one. And once we've done that, once all 3 are completed, we have this task.winall. So you notice that we've added each task in turn to this parallel tasks, which is a list of tasks. So this list of tasks now, once I've got all 3 tasks in, then it has a method called winall. And this is an event that'll fire when all 3 of those tasks are completed. There's also a when any, maybe you want to fire when any of the 3 tasks complete. We can do that as well. So we're going to wait here until all 3 are completed, and at that point, then we will actually call function 4. All right, that's some code, but let me show you a demo of that. If I go to the Azure portal, and if you don't have an Azure account, you can just go to azure.com and sign up for a free account. Kevin, do we have any questions yet?
The chat is pretty quiet. A lot of people, but everyone's just watching intensely or lurking.
All right, in Azure, what I need to do is, if I want to create anything, then I'll click on this big plus button here. It's either here or you might see it looking like this, create a resource. Either one of those buttons. That's how you create something in Azure. And I'm going to create an Azure function. So after I click plus, it'll ask me, what do you want to create? Let's try that again, plus. And I could search for it here. If I just search for function, I want to create a function app. And this just little links to documentation, description, but click on create. And it'll bring up a dialog. We call this a blade that asks us some basic things about the function app. For example, what subscription do I want to use? And most of you will probably only have one subscription, but you can. I have a few of them, so I can modify that. What resource group to put it in? Resource group is just a way of organizing a bunch of assets in Azure together. So I'm going to create a special one just for this demo. I'll call it DG test Swift kick RG. Okay. And give this function app a name. I'll call it DG test Swift kick func app. And what language do I want to run in? Do I want to run .NET, or these aren't languages, these are stacks, but do I want to run C# or F# or JavaScript or Python? I didn't think I had Python on my slide. I need to update that. I'll do it in .NET here. I can tell it where I want it to run. I happen to live in Chicago, Illinois, so I'll say Central US. And then review and create. This will just check to make sure that I haven't missed anything or done something inconsistent, like select a region where it's not supported. And everything looks good, so I click on create. And in less than a minute, it'll actually create a function app. I can watch the progress up here, see the deployment. in progress. I click on this little bell up here. I can watch it running, but it shouldn't take very long. What this will do is it will create a function app. And within that function app, I can add functions. I can add one or more functions to it. It'll also create, when I create a new function, it'll add some boilerplate, like a sample function to do something simple. Like I think the code is to take in a person's name and say hello to that person. Something very simple like that.
I always like to play the Jeopardy music during this screen.
Oh, music, yeah.
Yeah.
We're risking any licensing problems here for you.
And on Twitch, it just mutes the channel when it replays. On YouTube, I don't know what they do yet. So we'll see if they notice.
All right. It looks like it's gone through all the steps here, but still not quite complete. This gives me a chance to ask you, Swift Kick, is that short for anything by chance?
It's short for Swift Kick in the Patootie.
Is it? That was my guess. I didn't want to assume anything.
Well, that's our motto: is we'll give your team Swift Kick in the butt, or give your app a Swift Kick in the butt. That's our specialty.
All right.
Swift kicking. Yeah, you gotta love this screen. It just takes forever.
It usually doesn't, actually. Usually it takes less than a minute. This is, and I think it's been more than a minute already.
It's all those. Yep, there we go.
Go to resource. Now this screen takes about 20 minutes to come up. Not really. And here we go. We have a function app. I call it a DG test with the Swift Kick Func app. And under here, there is a place for functions, but we don't yet have any functions. So I'm going to create one by clicking the plus button. And here it asks me, do I want to create it in Visual Studio or VS Code or some other text editor? These would just be links to documentation to go out and create one out. And I'll show you later on how to do that. But if I want to do a real quick demo, I can do someone right here in the portal. I'll click on in portal. Actually, it's worth going to, if I click on any editor. Oh, I have to continue. I won't do that here. It just links to some documentation. I'll click on in portal and I'll click continue. And then it asks me, what's the trigger? Is it going to be a webhook, which would be an HTTP trigger, or it'll be a timer, or there's a bunch of other options here. I'll click on that to see the other options. But you can see, finish the view template. There are dozens of them in here. Timer, Azure Queue, Azure Service Bus, Azure Blob Storage, Azure Cosmos DB, SendGrid, maybe when an email comes in, all kinds of triggers that would launch depending upon what you want to do. So I'm gonna select the HTTP trigger, and I can give this a name to this function if I want to. HTTP trigger 1 is fine. I'll just leave the default of that. Click on create. And then we'll create a new function within this function app. And it'll actually give it a little sample code, which we'll see here. And because this is an HTTP trigger, I actually can launch it with a call hitting an HTTP. So I'm going to launch Postman. Usually that's tool for testing HTTP. It does take a minute to start up, so I'll launch that in the background. And you can see here's the code right here. There's no project, there's just a class. with a method in here, the run method right there. Go away from that right there. And it has an HTTP request here and an iLogger there. And all it's doing the logger for is just to log information, you know, this thing was triggered. And then here it's pulling something out of that HTTP request. This will pull a parameter called name from the query string and store it in a variable called name. And then this will read the body of the request. So if it's an HTTP post, it will have a body attached to it and convert it into JSON. And then this data right here, if it's JSON, if that JSON object has a property called name, then it can use that. So what this line of code does, it says, if the name, which we got from the query string, if that's not empty, use that. If it's empty, then go into, pardon me, then look at the JSON for a property called name. Whatever that is, store it in here. And then it also checks to see if it's still null, meaning it wasn't in either the query string or the body. If it's not null, then it's going to return an HTTP 200, an OK response with the string in the body of it, hello, comma, whatever the name that was passed in. If it was null, that means they forgot to pass a name in. It'll return an HTTP 400 bad request with, you know, please pass a name somewhere. And I can actually test that right here, run, by which will trigger that. Here's an HTTP post with name is equal to Azure in this JSON, and you can see the output was hello Azure. So if I change this to hello, where the name is Kevin, and then run it again, which is right there, then it'll return a 200 and output hello Kevin. And I can do the same thing with this function here. Here's the HTTP endpoint right there. So I'll copy that. And because this supports both, you know, let's close that. This supports both a get and a post. I can just go in here and do a post, or sorry, do a get, paste it in here, and that will send a get request to here, question mark name equals Kevin, like that, and it should return a 200 along with do that again, paste, and oh, we've already got a question mark here, so I do ampersand name equals Kevin, add it to the query string, and it should return a 200 along with hello comma Kevin. And if I want to do a post, it's hard to do a post inside of the browser, but that's what Postman comes in, is I can grab a new tab here. This is a free tool. You can just search for Postman, download Postman, and do that. And if I want to do a post, I select post as the verb, and in the body of this, I can add some JSON that looks kind of like this. Name, colon, David, and send that. And I got a 5. I got a bad request back. And what did I do wrong? I think because I need quotes around this. Let's try that. Post to that endpoint, click send. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that was what it was. And I got 200 back. And so this actually allows me to do something a little bit more sophisticated, like modifying the body and adding headers and things like that. So this is it. This is already deployed. It's out in Azure. But I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. This is not really, you can't really manage the versions of these things, and multiple users don't have a good way of doing that. If you want to do a better job, there's some tooling inside of both Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code. I've got Visual Studio open right there, where you can create a new function by selecting File, New Project. And up here, look for function. And there's Azure Functions right there. And use that next. And I'll put it in C/test /swift kick demo, and I'll call it, yeah, function app 1 is fine for the demo purposes. And here it'll ask me which trigger I want to use for this function app. I'll leave it at HTTP trigger, but you can see there's lots of options here. Here you can specify where which function apps under the hood do use some Azure storage, and I've got the storage emulator running right here, so I can use that. And this will create a function app, I think with one function in it already. So I can edit that function, or I can add new functions to it. Let me maximize this code screen here. And here's the one function that was added to it. So this is pretty similar to what we saw online. We've got a function with the name function1. I'll rename this function1. Let's call it SW function SK function for Swift Kick. And these red squiggly lines, I can get rid of those just by doing a build. Let me do that. It probably hasn't updated all the NuGet packages, is why it has all these red squiggly lines. And that succeeded. So if we look at the code here, it's pretty similar. We've got this HTTP trigger here. We're telling it that it supports both a GET and a POST. So if I didn't want to support GET, I could remove that. It's using default routing, and that's on this HTTP request. REQ is the name of this thing. So the first thing it does is it logs something right there. It gets the name from the query string, and then it gets the name also from the body, and it decides, okay, if it's in the query string, use that, otherwise use what's in the body. And then as long as it got something, then return hello, comma, whatever name it got as an HTTP 200. Okay, object results at 200. If it didn't find the name at all, return a 500 and say, please pass the name, etc. Let me run this thing. Right here. And when I run this function, when I run the function app, it will not execute this code. All the running the function app does is it makes it available for this function to be triggered. And we'll see some output on screen here. It starts up, including some cool ASCII art. There we go. Right here, it's running, and this is the endpoint here. I only had one function, so this is, if you work with Web API, you'll know that this /API/function name is is the default routing built into Web API. And it supports both a GET and a POST. So I can, just like before, I can grab this URL here and copy it and put it in Postman and use that URL instead and click send, and it should, it's hard to tell here, so I'll say, I'll go back to hello Dan, I'll call my brother. Right there, send it. And I should get, if everything's working right, I should get a 200 back, and back here it should say hello Dan, and it does. And this is actually running this code right here. So if I put a breakpoint in that run method on the first line, you'll see that when I call it, it's actually running that code. And I can step, step, step. And there was nothing in the query string. Here, that's null, but step, step, this data.name did have something. Hello? It did, and it pulled it out of here. name David. And resume. And right here. And you can see actually the logging is taking place right in here. When I go down a little lower, I should see some logging that happened. It's hard to tell in this font here, but what was the code? It should look where HTTP function processed a request. You should probably see some logging in here somewhere. Well, I don't see it, but it's just hard to find it here. I remember post was somewhere here. And this is a trivial example, obviously, that just putting the word hello in front of something. But you can imagine that this function here would do something more elaborate than that. Look some information up in a database, or call another web service, or do some more complex processing, something that do some financial calculation and return the value to the user. This might be, or maybe move data from one place to another. That might be the trigger. Maybe you want to do that once a night. So things like that. This is whatever your business logic is, you can put it in here and deploy it and not really have to worry about how it's being deployed, where it's being stored, how it's being scaled, what hardware is it running on. All that is taken care of for you. In fact, if I wanted to deploy this, I can do so right here. Right click on here, and just like a web application, click publish, and it'll walk me through where I can log in and specify where exactly it's going to be deployed, either to an existing function app or creating a brand new function app, but I can do that here. Now, ideally, what you do is you integrate this with your source control system and your automated build process, which I'm not going to cover here, but these are just, if you've done that with Visual Studio Code before, there's all sorts of integration hooks in here that allow you to integrate with any kind of source control that you want. And then those typically have some deployment process that you can build your CI/CD around. All right, this was a simple function here. Let me show you some of the durable functions. And I've got some examples of that right here. Let's see. So I have this durable function here. Bring that up. And in this function, you'll notice some of the code that I showed on screen on the slides. What I'm going to do is I've got 3 functions set up, 3 activity functions set up that just perform a simple task, and I want to call them one after another. And I will use the output of one function as the input of another. So right here, you can see that I have 3 in a row. I'm calling this context.call activity async, calling function 1, function 2, and function 3. Each one of these outputs a message that is then used as the input of the next function. And I'm using this durable orchestration context, which I've decorated with orchestration trigger, to call these things. So this durable function will maintain the state. If you look at function 1, function 2, function 3, oh, by the way, the logic of it is I start with the words durable function, and then I output whatever it is at the end. So if I look at each one of these functions, function 1, function 2, function 3, they all look pretty much the same. I have this parameter passed in as decorated with activity trigger. And I just wait 5 seconds, and then I append some string to the end of the input parameter, and I return that as my output. And they all do the same thing. The string is slightly different. Function 2 done. There's a little bit of logging that goes on as well. So I'm just appending a string to the end and returning it, appending a string to the end of this one, this parameter, and returning that. So when I'm done, I should get durable function followed by, this is function 1 complete, followed by function 2 complete, followed by function 3 complete, etc. I'm going to output that whole thing. I always do log.log warning. It's not really a warning, but it shows up in yellow if I say log warning instead of log message. That's why I did that. And then I'll return that entire message. So I can do this. Let me just run this thing. And oh, I forgot to show you one thing. Actually, the durable function needs a trigger as well. It gets triggered by this starter function. And the starter function is in fact triggered by an HTTP request. So the starter function, its only job is to get triggered and then call the durable function. And that's this code right here. Once my control comes back, there we go. This code right here for my starter function says call starter.start new async durable function 1. So that's this code right here. This is available on my GitHub page if you want to download this simple function. But let's go ahead. Now we're running this function right here. I shouldn't say that. We're running the function app right here. And it's showing me my starter function, the URL of that, because it's an HTTP trigger. So I'll copy that. And this one doesn't accept any parameters. I'm just going to go into Postman and provide that right there and call it. It supports both a get and a post. I'll just use the get. It's a little bit simpler. And click send. And if we look over here, we should see the logs coming out. So as it calls function 1, I should see something being logged. And then it'll wait 5 seconds, then it'll call function 2. Wait 5 seconds, call function 3. Come on. So there you go, function 1. There was some log output, waits 5 seconds, appends something to the string. Function 2 gets called. It outputs something in the log. Waits 5 seconds, appends something to the string. Function 3 gets called, waits 5 seconds, then returns, and then I want to output that entire string. Durable function, function 1 done, function 2 done, function 3 done. Again, really simple example just to focus on how Azure Functions work, but your code would be a lot more complex than that. It would solve your business problem. And the other thing I want to show you is a parallel version of that. In this case, I'm going to call 3 functions essentially simultaneously. So I'll call function 1, function 2, function 3, and each one takes a while to return, but I don't wait between each one, I don't wait for a response from each one. I just fire it off. And I'll use the parallel task library to make sure that I know when each one is completed. So that's what I'm doing here. In this durable function, I know it's a durable function because of this orchestration trigger right here. Here, I am starting with a message durable function, and I'm going to use the parallel task library to create a list of tasks, and then I will add to that list. Make that big so you can see it. I'll add to that list every time I call the context.call activity async. I'll call function 1, function 2, function 3, and every single time I will add the return value, which is just a task to that parallel task library. And then right here, I say when all are completed, that's when this thing will run. And that await keyword says, don't go past this until this line completes. So this line will complete when all 3 of these have returned a value. And once they do, I can use the task's result property to actually get the return value of each one. And so here I'm actually it starts with a durable function, and then I append the result of each one with a carriage return line feed in between. And after that, when I'm done, I call function 4. And it is maintaining some state in here because function 4, I pass in a parameter that I got from functions 1, 2, and 3 right here. And all along the way, I'm outputting messages, and I'm going to return the full message with an HTTP 200 response. Let's try that. I'll run this function app. Here, oh, actually, I forgot something. I wanted to show you what those 3 functions do. So if I look at function 1, if I look at function 1, come on, right here, this looks a lot like the ones in serial. I log something out, I wait, in this case, 15 seconds, and then I log that's completed, and then I just append function 1 to the end of the input string. So I pass in a message, and I'm going to output that same message with function 1 at the end of it. Function 2 does almost exactly the same thing. The difference is that I'm appending the words function 2, and in function 2, I'm only waiting 10 seconds. Function 3, I'm only waiting 5 seconds. So even though I call these, first I call function 1, function 2, and function 3, because this one takes 5 seconds, this takes 10, and this takes 15, they should finish in reverse order. But I don't want to go on until they're all completed. And then, of course, I kick it off with this starter function right here, which has an HTTP trigger. All right, so let me go back in here. Here it is running. And this is the starter functions URL right there. So in Postman, if I call that like that and send it, then what I should get is after the function starts up, I'll see some log message going on here as it fires off function 1, function 2, and function 3. And then after 5 seconds, I should see function 3 finished. After 10 seconds, I should see function 2 finished. And after 5 seconds, I should see function 1 finished. Hope I said that right. And there we go. So 1, 2, and 3 all started up about the same time. And then function 3 was the first one to finish. 5 seconds later, function 2 finished. 5 seconds later, function 1 finished. And then function 4 gets called. And it takes, I didn't look at that, but I think it's about 5 seconds as well. And now they're all 3 done. And I output just durable function, colon, and then all of this, the return values. The messages get added to the end of each message right here. So that's it. This is a durable function using parallel processing. And finally, the last thing I want to show you, I'll show this really quickly because I think we're just about at the end of our hour, is using the data binding. And I don't have a Cosmos DB set up in my example here. I'll just show you the syntax of it. But if I look at this data binding here, what you can see you'll see in my solution that there is an attribute there's an argument for an item that gets stored in a Cosmos DB database. So right here, this is my function. Oops. This is my function here. It's called get item by ID. And this one actually will retrieve items from a data defined by a Cosmos DB connection, which I can put into my host JSON file to look up the connection string. It'll be a database named to-do list, and it'll be a collection in that database called items. And I can filter it by one that's item equals ID. So I pass in another parameter here, API/get item by ID / an ID number, then I would retrieve a to-do item. I don't have to write code to do that. And I have a insert item function over here, which automatically uses those same arguments. In this case, it will actually insert an item into here. And this to-do item is just a class with things like ID, description, is complete, the user, just a task list of items to do. I can't demo this right now because I don't have the Cosmos DB collection set up, but you can create a Cosmos DB database with a connection string and that database name and this collection in there, and this would work. If you want to see this code, you could actually get this from my GitHub repository right here. If I go out to github.com/my name, David Giard. There is some of demos, Azure Functions demos right here. And that has all the code that I just showed you. You can grab that from there. And then also you can look at, I mentioned earlier that I have a show at aka.ms/gcast. I actually have a show demonstrating Azure Functions. I have a couple of shows in here. And these are just short screencasts showing some of the demos that I've showed here. So you can walk through those, including the Cosmos DB demo. Let's bring that up. Let that finish after my slow internet connection today.
All those bits are going to Azure Functions.
Probably. I don't know. I've been away from, maybe it's mad at me for being away for a long time. I don't know, but this is there's lots of demos in here, and I've got the episode 65 right now. But you can go back into the videos tab and find the Azure Functions demo. There's few enough that I think I can just load the entire page and bring them up here. There you go. So if I search for functions, function in here somewhere. And now my browser's lying to me. I know I have functions there somewhere. Yeah, right here. So how do you create an Azure function? The portal is here in Visual Studio and so on. There's using continuous deployment, which I didn't cover today. All sorts of things. I was on Azure Function kick right around that time, right around 11 months ago. So that's more information in here as well. I think I'm on my last slide. If you want to learn more, go to azure.com. You can get a free Azure account there. There's links to my repository as well. I can give you that. And I'll just play us out right here. That's all I got, Kevin.
Sounds good.
It sounds real good. It sounds funky.
All right. All right. So we'll open up for any last minute questions there might be from the chat. Dave, we go and unshare your screen and we'll just go back to the head mode. Chat was really quiet. We had an amazing number of people out there, but none of them were chatting. They were all just lurking, which is fine. That happens all the time. No big deal.
No, here, stop share. There we go.
Ha.
All right. So,
well, all I would say with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. It is top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and let people go. Over on Twitch, I'm going to raid another channel. So I'm going to send all my viewers off to someone else, and hopefully they can get some more good value. You know our good friend Brent Schooley. Do you know Brent?
I do. Yeah.
So he's live right now, and he could use
a huge Twitch guy.
What's that?
The big Twitch guy.
Yeah, definitely. And he's talking some Twilio right now, which is one of my favorite frameworks, platforms to use. So
can he hear us now?
What's that?
Can he hear us right now?
No, he can't. He's off doing his thing. I'm going to just send viewers over to him.
Oh, okay. All right.
So with that, David, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. And thank you to everyone watching live on Twitch, YouTube, everything like that. With that, I'm going to start the raid, and we'll talk to everyone next time. All right. Oh, it takes the raid 10 seconds to start. Oh, my gosh.
You know what our friend Seth told me one time was that if there's awkward silence in a presentation, it's not awkward for me. It's only awkward for you.
It's absolutely. Let's see. I'm trying to get some people into this raid. Come on, people. I want to raid. Only 2 people want to raid. No one else wants to raid. That's all right. That's not a problem. So I'm just going to hit raid now. And let's see what happens over there.
I don't even know what raid means.
So raid just means we're going to send people over there.
Like a Viking raid? Like we're going to invade them?
So he just got his raid on. So all right. Well, David, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And we had to reschedule this. This was supposed to happen back in May, and we ran into some issues. So, oh well. All right, David. Well, I will see you next time. Take care.
See you, Kevin.
All right. Take care, David.